Gopijanavalabha Girivardhari Gopijanavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Janavalabha Girivardhari Janavalabha Girivardhari Shodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Natira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Madhava Kunjavihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha. Jaya Radha Samasundara Samasundara. Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Nitya Go Hare Ba Hare Ba Hare Ba Nitya Go Hare Ba Hare Ba Hare Ba Acharya Sudar Sudashri Divine Guest Apachan Bhakti Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Iskan Pamacharya Divine Guest Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Yo Vishnu Paparam Sabharvati Acharya Sudar Sudashri Divine Guest Shri Bhakti Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Anand Puri Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Vidas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sri Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai Shri Shiva Hare Krishna Gopika Shyam Chandra Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Vandarajman Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glory is to the simple devotees. All glory is to the simple devotees. All glory is to the simple devotees. All glory, Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glory, Shri Prabhupada Ki.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining us on our Srimad Bhagavatam series. Just a sound check. Everyone can hear my audio. Sound is okay? Good. Thank you very much. Apologies for starting late due to internet issues. Managed to sort out something else. So better late than never to glorify the Lord and hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're covering Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verses 30 to 34. And here we're going to hear the answers to questions 3 and 4 that the sages had asked Sutta Goswami. Let us do the invocation. Om Jnana Timivandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sadhana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Vyusha Sarva Vedika Satpala Sarva Siddhantaratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kali Dvando Didatitya Shri Krishna Parivartita Ocean Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you are enriched with this jewels of all spiritual philosophic conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshasharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namaste. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you, one attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madekabandhu mat sangin man kuro man mahadana man nishtaraka mad bhagya madananda namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Asadu satu tadahin attini chochara taraka hanamun chakada chinmam premna ritkatyospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplifter of the very fallen, Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in my heart and my throat, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadhyasya Yatonvayari Taratas Charte Swabhigna Swara, Tene Brahma Hidaya Dikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya, Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Tirsargo Mrisha, Damna Swena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading person out of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanopaisha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Mandabagyu Padrita. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayanam Namaskritya Narachevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savayapum saparo dharmo yato bhakti radoksha jaya hoitukya pratihata yatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanities, that by which men can attain to the loving devotional service under the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Suvairagyam Jnanam Chayadahitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajgnanam tattvam yajgnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Shushrusho Shradanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains the divinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyantastoya Badrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta prayashu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati nashtiki. By regular attendance and a class on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed in loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise were transcendental songs established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of the Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna. So let us get some feedback from the devotees on Canto 1, Chapter 2, verses 22 to 29 that we covered last week. What you found interesting, what you took home, what you learned from last week's lesson. You can either unmute or you can type in the chat. Mother Archana CD says the Vedas are for all grades of living entities, correct. Generally, There are many different scriptures that appear in this world, but those scriptures are according to time, place, and circumstance. The Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Buddhist scriptures, they are specific for a time, a place, and circumstance. They are not absolute scriptures for eternity for all living entities. The Vedas, on the other hand, are for all grades of living entities, for all time. Hemavati says, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. Serve Krishna, serve all the demigods. If we serve Krishna, we serve everyone. All the demigods, all the living entities, every part and parcel gets served by serving Krishna. And we fulfill all our obligations simply by serving the Supreme Lord. Mother Uttara says, to leave the prison, there is only one option: worship Vishnu or his expansions. Yes. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, we heard about demigods being servants of Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam 7th Canto, we read about Hiranyakashipu, how he became so powerful, he had control over all the demigods. Only Lord Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva were not under his control. So even this great demon overpowered demigods at one point. Yes, the demigods are not all powerful. They have power, and they have greater power than the human beings, but they're not all powerful. Krishna is the supremely all-powerful personality. Nalikanta says, to rise up to pure goodness beyond the flight. Yes, we want to come to the level of pure goodness by the process of Krishna consciousness, by practicing. Then we'll take the flight. Vaikuntha Alliance, Goloka Alliance. Sukadev Goswami says, material world is a prison house. We must only worship Lord Shri Krishna. The goal is to come out of the prison house. Yes. Sham says, the purpose of religion is not material gain, but to gain knowledge, to release oneself from material bondage. Yes, and everything should be used in Krishna's service. Whatever we have in this material world, we are blessed to use this material world and all its facets and energies in devotional service and gain the credit. Hemavati Radhika says, eat only Krishna Prasad. Prabhupada says, two things. If we use the tongue simply for eating Krishna Prasad and chanting Hare Krishna, we will perfect our life. And accepting some austerity for higher life. Yes, if we simply embrace all austerities as an opportunity to advance, to purify our life, we will become perfect. And we also learned about the 12 Mahajans who know true principles of religion. Thank you very much for your feedback. Let us proceed with today's lesson. So we're going to be concluding today's verses, which ends this chapter 2. We're going to be covering 30 to 33, which answers question 4. So Sutta Goswami, he doesn't answer the questions in a chronological order, but he answers it in a logical order. And therefore, he feels that the logical order in terms of his presentation is to answer question 4 first, and then question 3. And he's just introducing the answer here. So he's answering question 4 and question 3, and then he will expand. The Bhagavatam will expand on these questions further as we go through each canto. So in the chat, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Please give me your response. Question 1, and now try to keep it focused. We are hearing from the Bhagavatam. We want to focus on the Bhagavatam and the answers according to the Bhagavatam. So according to Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essence of all instructions, and we should be molding our life according to the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the ultimate good for all living beings? What is the ultimate good for all living beings? Can please type in the chat, what is the ultimate good for all living beings? To know the absolute truth? No. We're going to have to recap the first canto. To serve the Supreme Lord, Krishna? Yes. So it's interesting, Mother Hemavati, to accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality? No. It's interesting how the Bhagavatam is giving us the answers, yet the nature of material life is we perceive it differently or we code it differently, and we may slightly go off a tangent. To develop love for Sri Krishna, yes, bhakti, pure devotional service. To perform devotional service without motivation and interruption, yes. So that is the ultimate good, bhakti, one word. Or you could say Krishna bhakti, or you could say Krishna or prema bhakti, pure devotional service to Krishna. Right? So that's the ultimate good. We should never forget this. Then question 2, what is the essence of all scriptures? What is the essence of all scriptures? Engage in devotional service and develop your love of Godhead. Correct. In fact, question 1 and question 2 have the same answer. Bhakti, prema bhakti, Krishna bhakti, pure devotional service. Unmotivated, uninterrupted, pure devotional service. Both of them have the same answer. Now, who should we worship? Who should be the only object of worship? Who should be the only object of worship? Lord Krishna. Very good. Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna should be the only object of worship. Not even the expansions. Bhagavatam is giving us the focus. We find that the expansions are described in the Vedas. Vyasadeva had described all the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas, and even in the Upasan section, he has presented Vishnu worship. So the incarnations also described in many parts of the Vedas. But still he was not satisfied, completely satisfied. He was instructed, and we're going to come to that pastime in the first canto, by Narad Muni to present the absolute truth, personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. Therefore, Bhagavatam is giving us the clear focus. Shri Krishna is the only object of worship. How do we acquire a taste for hearing Krishna Katha? How do we acquire a taste for hearing Krishna Katha? Satsang, more specific. Serving devotees free from vice, correct. By chanting and hearing more and more from the devotees, by listening sincerely by listening sincerely in the souls and devotees, rendering souls to pure devotees, correct. Mahat Seva, serving the great devotees, serving the pure devotees. By serving the pure devotees, and different services are there, hearing from them, serving their vapu, their vani, their physical form, hearing from them. By serving them, serving their desire, their mission, we develop the urge to hear the messages of Vasudeva. And what happens when you regularly hear Krishna Katha? What happens when you regularly hear Krishna Katha, even with internet issues? You want to hear more and more? Good. Madhatma Darshini says, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost eradicated, and all the weeds are removed. You develop love of God, you become purified, cleanse the heart. Yes, joyful, want to hear more. Very good. So your taste increases, Krishna purifies, personally purifies your heart, all the weeds are removed, and you become a pure love of Krishna, or that pure love is revived. So this is what happens. Thank you very much. So we're going to be now covering, Sutta Goswami is going to answer question 3 and 4, and it's going to be focusing on the material creation, on the material world. So generally, people have different understandings of creation. The atheists, they say creation came by a Big Bang. Then there are those who are theistic. They say it's created by an intelligent being called God. God means generator, operator, destroyer. And then Srimad Bhagavatam is going to give us a more detailed description of how creation comes, and even the process of understanding creation. So clearly, we can understand that creation does not happen from a Big Bang. The only thing that manifests from a Big Bang is an explosion that is disruptive and chaotic. You don't get order coming from an explosion. It's interesting that we have never experienced where from an explosion we get order. Consider, the Oxford Dictionary. It's not like they put all the alphabets in a room, created an explosion, and then all of a sudden, all those alphabets fell into a beautiful systematic order of a dictionary. Nope. If you put alphabets in a room and explode them, you will have nothing but chaos. So it's insanity to even think that creation came from a Big Bang. But because people are in this material world and they want to minus the Supreme Lord, then they will come up with these theories. There is an intelligent design and there is an intelligent designer. But who is that intelligent designer? And how did he actually create the different aspects of creation? So those details we will be going into. And these verses from 30 to 33 answering question 4, which was, which adventures does the Lord perform in his incarnations, especially related to creation? So for the Lord, it's adventure, it's pastime. It's not hard work. It's joyful. And this is going to be focusing on the Purusha avatars. So Lord Shri Krishna manifests the material world by expanding into the Purusha avatars. Already in the first verse, Srimad Bhagavatam instructed and told us that Shri Krishna, Janmad Yasya Yaton Vayaditaratas, Shri Krishna is the absolute truth from whom everything emanates. He's overseeing creation, maintenance, and destruction. Now, there's a difference between the absolute truth and God. There was one God brother of Srila Prabhupada, before he became a devotee, he decided to search for God. And he said, I'm going to go to India to search for God. So he came to India and he went all over India to search for God. Went to every single temple, or most of the temples. And his conclusion after visiting many, many temples of the different deities, his conclusion was, after his end of the journey, was that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Krishna is God. Why? Because Krishna is the only one that doesn't have anything in his hand that tells us that he's working. Supreme Absolute Truth, somebody who's in charge of everything, means he doesn't do any work. He gets others to work for him. So Krishna, he's got a flute, means he's playing. So he's the absolute truth. You'll see Lord Vishnu also has different paraphernalia in his hand. He has a club to beat the demons, chakra to annihilate the demons. He has the lotus and the conch shell to offer benediction. So he's doing something. So therefore he can be classified as God. Krishna is the absolute truth who manifests as God for the purpose of creation. And the first expansion of Krishna for creation in terms of the Purusha avatars is Karandakasai Vishnu, also called Mahavishnu. He's lying on the causal ocean, the Karana ocean. Then from him, millions of universes come out from his pores. And then he expands as the second Vishnu, called Garbhodakasai Vishnu. He's lying on the Garbha ocean within the universe. So the universe is then split, is divided into two. From the Lord's perspiration, he fills the ocean with that perspiration, which becomes the Garbha ocean. And on that ocean, he lies on a serpent bed, and a lotus sprouts from his navel. You can ask someone a question: how is it that every child is born connected to the mother via the umbilical cord? That's because the first living being within this material creation was also born in the same way. The umbilical cord is connected to Mahavishnu, and on that lotus, on that connected to the top of that umbilical cord, Brahma is born, and he starts to create the planets within the universe. He's the secondary engineer, secondary creator. Once he creates, then the Lord expands again as the third Vishnu, Kshirodakasai Vishnu, who also lies within the material world in Swetudip, where is the ocean of milk, Shira. Shira means milk. And this is the Vishnu, the Paramatma in everyone's heart. So there are three Vishnus, and we're going to be discussing this subject. Will come up again in many parts of the Bhagavatam, because in different sections of the Bhagavatam, creation is described very extensively. So we will have an opportunity to speak more and more about the subject matter. Now, what's important is we should not go into analysis paralysis. If we get into too much analyzing and trying to find out all the facets, it'll be impossible and we'll become paralyzed. We should know as much as we are meant to know from the Bhagavatam and the Bhakti Shastras. There are unlimited things to know about how the Lord creates, and it's inconceivable to know everything. So therefore, whatever we have been presented with, that we should know, and that is sufficient. There may be other aspects of the creation which is described in the Vedas that is beyond our comprehension. In most cases, it'll be beyond our comprehension. Do not try to understand it if it's beyond our comprehension. Just accept. This is the basis of faith. Accept it. And when you become a pure devotee, at that time, if you still desire to see Mahavishnu, meet him, and understand creation and see creation, then your desire can also be fulfilled. But otherwise, do not go into analyzing every detail to such a facet, such minute detail that you can become paralyzed. So Prabhupada talks about these three Purusha incarnations in Bhagavad Gita. I quote two purports here. Prabhupada says the three Purusha avatars are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, and they are also described in the Satvata Tantra. Vishnu, two, three ni rupani purushakyanta ato vidu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests three features as Karana Dakasai Vishnu, Garbho Dakasai Vishnu, and Shira Dakasai Vishnu in this material manifestation. The Mahavishnu or Karana Dakasai Vishnu is described in Brahma Samhita. Yat Karanar Naiva Jale Bhajati Sma Yoga Nidram. The Supreme Lord, Krishna, is the cause of all causes, lies down in the cosmic ocean as Mahavishnu. Therefore, the personality of Godhead is the beginning of this universe and the maintainer of the universe, universal manifestations, and the end of all energy. Then another purport Prabhupada says in the 7th canto text, the 7th chapter, verse 4, the science of Godhead and analyzes the constitutional position of God and his diverse energies. Material nature is called Prakriti, or the energy of the Lord in his different Purusha incarnations, expansions, as described in the Satvata Tantra. Vishnu's two Tripani Rupani, Purushaktya Yanyato Vidhu, Ekam tu Mahat Shristri Divitiyam tu Ananda Shamstitam Tritiyam Sarva Bhutastam Tani Gnatva Vimuchate. Quote, the material creation, for material creation, Lord Krishna's plenary expansions assume three Vishnus, The first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy known as Mahatattva. The second, Garbhodakasai Vishnu, enters into all the universes to create diversity in each one of them. The third, Kshirodakasai Vishnu, is diffused as the all-pervading supersoul in all the universes and is known as Paramatma. He is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these three Vishnus can be liberated from material entanglement. So that last statement I found very profound. That anyone who knows these three Vishnus can be liberated from material entanglement. This is the power of knowing about the Purusha avatars. So the first Vishnu, Mahavishnu, he creates the total material energy known as the Mahatattva. Garbhodakasai Vishnu, he creates diversity. Kshirodakasai Vishnu, supersoul, permeates the whole, every atom, every part of the universe. So these are the three Vishnus. We should try to memorize these three different names of the three Vishnus. So verse 30, 1 to 30, I'm starting to answer question 4. Sa evadam sasarjagre bhagavan atmamayaya sad asad rupaya chaso guna maya guna vibhu. In the beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. Prabhupada starts off by explaining in the purport, the position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected, therefore, by the qualities of the material modes. His existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the world. So Prabhupada is starting this purport with a very important point that we have to appreciate. That Krishna, even when he creates the creation, and the creation has certain qualities, the Supreme Lord Krishna is totally transcendental and does not have those qualities. He is totally aloof of those qualities. He is completely spiritual, and everything related to the Lord is spiritual. It's not a material, and he's not tinged by even the laws that he creates. And here the first law that's presented is the law of cause and effect. We find that effect is what happens in a situation, and cause is why something happens. The whole material world is started off with this law of cause and effect. And when we appreciate and understand this law, we will also know how to act. So we find, for example, in all aspects of life, there's a cause. Someone lights fire to the house and the house burns. There's an effect. Or somebody drops a domino and there's an effect. Now, there is an effect, and that effect may be felt immediately after some time, or even life after life in the future lives. So we suffering also the effects of our previous lives. It's not necessarily immediate effect. As we can see, this domino is definitely going to fall on the person who started it. It's a similar principle of every action as an equal and opposite reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. This is the law of karma, the most fundamental law, and people know this law. So here is a boat, and the person is rowing the boat. I have a question. Will this boat move? Will this boat move? The man is rowing, the passenger. will the boat move? Varun says, yes, it will. Kalpana says, yes. And we got more yeses, yeses, yes. Very good. Radhika, yes, if it's not anchored. That is the proper answer. So if we just look at it, we say, yes, it's going to move, but you don't know all the aspects of this situation. And Radhika was spot on that, yes, if the anchor is not removed, he can row and row and row and nothing's going to happen. So a lot of the time we can see the effect of something, but we don't know all the causes. And sometimes we know that there's a cause and there may be different effects, and therefore we think something's not right because we don't know all the causes. This aspect of cause and effect is very vast, and because we don't know every aspect that's causing a result, we cannot conclude conclusively on the outcome. We may speculate, but only Krishna knows why everything happens, because he is all-knowing. Now, when we understand this first law, let's see how we can apply it. So here is a situation. He is soaring away, and he's going to cause an effect. What is the effect that we're going to experience, that we're going to see? He's going to fall, definitely. He's going to fall. Now, when he falls, he may blame the tree. He may blame gravity. He may blame so many things and so many aspects, but he should be blaming himself, because he's the one that caused that branch to break by soaring it. So in every situation, in every cause and effect situation in this world that we're going to be experiencing, we should understand that there may be different causes. Like, how come he fell? Well, the branch was dislocated from the tree, and because of gravity, he fell down. If there was no gravity and he's soaring, as soon as he finished sawing the branch, guess what will happen if there's no gravity? He'll be floating on the branch. No problem. There will be no harm. But because of gravity, he fell down. So you could blame gravity. You could blame the saw. You could blame the branch. You could blame the tree. You could blame so many things. But ultimately, in our situation, we should understand that whatever we're getting, it's because of me. And therefore, if I don't want the effect, if I don't want to fall, if I don't want the things I'm receiving, then I need to change myself. I need to change my behavior. Gandhi described this very nicely. He said, keep your thoughts positive, because your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive, because your words become your behavior. Keep your behavior positive, because your behaviors become your habits. Keep your habits positive, because your habits become your values. And keep your values positive, because your values become destiny. So in essence, a lot of people, they know about these laws. They have written theses on these laws. And by understanding the laws, they can also understand that they need to change, because if they change their values, their behaviors, their words, their thoughts, etc., then the effect will be different. Okay, so therefore, we have to understand that in every situation, there may be different options. We are always free to choose. We have the freedom, we have free will to always choose, even though we may be destined due to our past causes. We're going to be getting the effects in this life or in the future lives. We're going to get, it's going to be destined to come to us, but we are always free to choose how to react to every situation. And the best way to react starts with our mental state. And the absolute way to react is man mana bhava mad bhakta, think of Krishna. So when we think of Krishna, then that is the best form of reacting, even to negative scenarios, negative situations, when we think of Krishna. So if something happens, we can understand, yes, this is because Krishna has created this cause and effect law. How wonderful. And he's created it for many reasons. And one reason is to give me what I want. So I've created, I've planted I planted seeds and I'm getting the fruits. If I want thorns, I plant thorny seeds or seeds related to thorny plants. If I want mangoes, I plant mango seeds. So I can get whatever I want by Krishna's mercy, because he has created this wonderful law. Prabhupada says there is no escape of this law. In a lecture, Prabhupada says, you cannot expect peace and you go on killing animals. That is not possible. If you want peace, then you must think for others also. That is Krishna consciousness. That is God consciousness. How you can kill another animal. He is also as good a child of God. So Prabhupada understood the laws of creation, understood the laws that the Lord had implemented in this creation. And this law, as you sow, so shall you reap. If you want peace, you have to stop killing. If you're killing wholesale, so many animals for your palate, for your tongue, for your taste, you will suffer. And no doubt we can see in this world, killing is going on. So without fail, there is going to be a reaction, without fail. And unfortunately, we are in the material world. It's not that we are isolated. We are living on a planet that's not affected by these karmic laws. Nope. There are universal laws, and there's collective karma that's applicable. And because we are in this age, at this point in time, we are suffering or enjoying the due collective karmic reaction. Just like technology, we are enjoying the technology. We are able to glorify the Lord through the internet. So that means we are enjoying the technology. It's because of our karmic reaction. Similarly, even the karmic reaction of a pandemic, the karmic reaction of a war, the karmic reaction of any form of suffering, this is due to us because we have sown certain seeds in the past, and Krishna is delivering the effect now. Therefore, if there's only one person to be blamed for an epidemic, for suffering, for any disaster, it's you. If you blame everyone else or everything else, you will never change the outcome. But if you change, then the environment will automatically change, because if I become completely Krishna conscious, I will not be in this world. I will not be in the prison. So this is how the Bhagavatam is trying to guide us in terms of thinking, in terms of developing the proper consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And here Prabhupada is saying that to think of others, this is Krishna consciousness. Think of others that are connected to Krishna. This is Krishna consciousness. How wonderful. So as you mentioned, many people have been studying these laws, cause and effect. Here's an example of Aristotle. He was studying the cause of this cause and effect law. And he says there are four causes: a person or thing that gives rise to actions, phenomenon, or conditions. There's the matter, the material cause. there's the agent, efficient cause, there's the formal cause, and there's the purpose, the final cause. So people actually, they speculate, they try to analyze, research, investigate these cause and effect laws. And they look at different things. For example, there's a material cause. That means for a table, the material cause would be wood and nails. So he's talking about ingredients. Without ingredients, you can't have a table. So therefore, the ingredients have a part to play, which are the effect to give, or they are the cause to give the effect, which is the table. Then he's researching and he's saying from a table, the efficient cause would be the carpenter, the person who made the table. So he also has to be a cause for the table, which is the effect. Then he says the cause, which is a formal cause. For a table, the formal cause would be the shape of the different shapes of the table. And then finally, for a table, the final cause would be the purpose, like a dining table, study table, the actual purpose. So he's, they're researching and they're trying to understand ultimately all forms of understanding should link us to Krishna. We should, like these philosophers may try to speculate about all the laws and they forget who created that law. Here the Bhagavatam is telling us that Krishna created the creation and manifested all these laws. So the link to all these laws is Krishna. And therefore, if we experience these laws, like the law of gravity, they give credit, to Newton that he discovered the apple fell and he discovered gravity, and they give him all the credit for getting Krishna. That's indirect atheism. See? That they should understand that he just discovered that law. Who created that law? He didn't create gravity. Who created gravity? Krishna created gravity. So the link should always be to Krishna. Then our understanding of all the laws is perfect. Text 31. Taya vilasitesh veshu guneshu gunavan iva anta pravishta abhati vignanena vijrimbitam. After creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudeva expands himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position. So now the Lord, not only is he creating, but now he's entering into it. So the Lord, he's in the spiritual world, playing his flute, enjoying with his associates in the spiritual world. There's many Vaikuntha planets. And the first expansion of the Lord within the material creation, or the first expansion to help the creation, is Karanadaksaya Vishnu. So in the beginning of creation, the Lord by his own potency created the material universe, which is composed of the modes of material nature and the laws of cause and effect. Here is a diagram that describes briefly in terms of Krishna being the cause of all causes. Then he expands as Balaram, the first expansion. And we also have to understand that this is also inconceivable that we say Balaram is the first expansion, yet these are eternal personalities. So it's really for us to understand, appreciate with a material mind in terms of the supreme position of Shri Krishna. So, because a lot of people confuse the absolute truth. Confusing the absolute truth with the demigods is one thing. It's actually a more major issue. But also a lot of people confuse the absolute truth with these different expansions. And they don't completely understand, because it seems like they're different personalities. At the same time, there are statements that they're not different personalities. So it becomes very confusing for the material mind. And as we go through each canto by canto, we will get a more clear understanding of these expansions. So first expansion, Balaram. Balaram then expands into the Chaturvuya, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. From this Sankarshan, Narayan expands, and from this Narayan, Mahasankarshan expands into another second quadruple, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Then we get from this Sankarshan, it's called Mahasankarshan, Mahavishnu, Karadaksai Vishnu expands, then Garbhadaksai Vishnu, and then Chiradaksai Vishnu. Now, within this aspect of creation, Sadashiva also plays a role. And Sadashiva is a Vishnu expansion coming from Sankarshan, staying within the Vaikuntha planets. Prabhupada says in the Vayu Puran, there is a description of Sadashiva in one of the Vaikuntha planets. That Sadashiva is a direct expansion of Lord Krishna's form for pastimes. It is said that Lord Shambhu Shiva is an expansion from the Sadashiva in the Vaikuntha planets, Lord Vishnu. Then there is commentaries given in Bhagavatam Rita, and Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, he writes, Sadashiva is without a trace of tamagun. He is the cause of all causes, and he is the Narayan Vilas form, Angabhuta, of Swayam Rupa Krishna, Swayam Prabhu. In the Taitra Upanishad, the names Narayan, Achyuta, and Shiva are used to indicate only one person. The Sadashiva mentioned in the Brahma Samhita is a Vilas expansion of Krishna, a form of Narayan. Vilas are the expanded forms of Godhead, endowed with different degrees of potency from the original Godhead, Sri Krishna. So Krishna, he is there eternally. And in order to create the material creation, he does not do the work as we mentioned. He expands, and these expansions are his pastimes, as it described. Lord Krishna's forms for pastimes. So it's basically, he's enjoying these creations, these forms of creation, like artists. An artist that likes to paint, they're creating paintings and enjoying their paintings. It's like recreation for them. It's not work. So Krishna, when he expands in all these different expansions, it's really his pastimes. He's enjoying. It's all about enjoying. So Sadashiva is an expansion of Krishna that facilitates the creation of the material world, which we will touch on just now. Another point here, which is also interesting to mention, is that in the Vedas, they may, depending on the context, they may interchangeably use Narayan, Achyuta, and Shiva. When they talk about Shiva, they are talking about Sadashiva, when in context, it's referring to the absolute truth. Sometimes people would read it out of context and think it's Rudra. So this way, they don't understand it in complete context or completely, perfectly, if they take it out of context. So it's very important to understand the context in which to understand these statements. So the Lord glances. I'm going to just briefly cover this aspect of creation. Then we'll continue into the different verses. And in the different chapters that we're going to be going over in the future, it will become more and more clear. Okay. So Krishna, he expands, as we mentioned, through the different Chaturvuya, Sankarshan expansion, and Mahavishnu is there, and Mahavishnu is lying on the causal ocean, and as he breathes in and out, empty shells, universal shells, emanate from his pores like bubbles, and these bubbles are empty. There's nothing in it. Okay, and as they come out of his body, millions, trillions, unlimited numbers. As they come out, they're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, empty shells. Within each universe, this is an example of a universe, the Lord is going to enter. into these empty shells. As he breathes out, universes are created. As he breathes in, universes are destroyed. It takes him a quarter of a second, one nisha, to breathe out and breathe in, like how we breathe. We breathe in and out. So one breath of Mahavishnu is creation. As he exhales, as he inhales, destruction. And this keeps on going. So that takes our lifetime, 311 trillion, 40 billion years. Krishna creates, 311 trillion, 40 billion years later, he destroys. And that's a quarter of a second. A long time for us, insignificant time for the Lord. In order for creation to manifest, the Lord glances over the material energy. So it's described that the spiritual world, compared to the material world, the material world is 1/4 of the Lord's creation. The spiritual is 3/4. One part of Krishna's creation, small part, 1/4, is the prison house. And in one part of Krishna's creation is where the unmanifested ingredients of material nature is. You know, when the scientists talk about the explosion, that's the unmanifested ingredients. That's where it is. So that is in the form of unmanifested Mahatattva. And the Lord, in order to start the creation, as soon as he desires, then he glances over that ingredients. He agitates those ingredients by his glance. And that material energy personified is Durga, Parvati. So the Lord glances. Nowhere does the Supreme Lord come in contact directly with the material energy. The contact is via glance. And this glance, this halo that comes in context and activates, empowers, triggers Durga, this glance is actually a manifestation of Shambhu. So this is Shambhu coming in the form of glance and contacting Durga, really impregnating Durga, agitating Durga. And this glance, which is a manifestation of Shambhu, is an expansion of Sadashiva in the spiritual world. So Sadashiva that we mentioned in the spiritual world expands through the agency of Mahavishnu in the form of the glance as Shambhu and contacts Durga, Parvati. Within Mahavishnu's body, when creation, let's say there is creation, living entities are there, and when the Lord is breathing in destruction, when the Lord breathes in and all these universes go back into his body, all the living entities go into his body. And that means all the living entities are in his body. So when the Lord now starts to create again, he glances, and that glance has all the living entities that are now taken by Lord Shiva in the form of glance, impregnated into the material energy, into Durga. Therefore, it's explained that Shambhu is carrying all the living entities as the lingam and impregnating the womb, the Shiva lingam, which has the base as the womb, and this is how creation starts. Now, there's a lot of detail and technicality which we don't want to go into unnecessarily, and we want to continue in terms of the verses. But when the Lord impregnates Durga, Durga then starts creating, or the creation starts to manifest, and then these universes, they expand. The Lord then enters into each universe as Garbhodakasai Vishnu, and because it's empty and it's sealed, there's no air cons and there's no windows, the Lord begins to perspire, gets hot. And from his perspiration, water, Garbha ocean develops. Then he manifests, Anantashesh manifests there for the Lord to lie down. Lakshmi Devi, who's also present here in an unmanifested form as Rama Devi. Rama Devi is an expansion of Lakshmi. She then appears, massages the Lord, then the lotus stem manifests, and it's explained that according to each universe, the living entities that were impregnated, they will go to the specific universes according to their karmic reaction, according to their past karma. And the living entity that has the highest piety of all the living entities in that specific universe, who's now situated in the body of the Lord, will become Lord Brahma. Then Brahma creates, and with the three modes of material nature and the facilitation of Durga, all the creation starts. And in this way, there is actual planets, etc., that's created. And then the Lord expands again as Paramatma, Super Soul, and then enters into his creation. So that's briefly how the creation is happening. Prabhupada says, the Paramatma is our eternal friend. The living entities are separated parts and parcel of the Lord, and the conditioned living entities who are unfit for spiritual kingdom are strewn within the material world to enjoy matter to the fullest extent. As Paramatma and eternal friend of the living entities, the Lord, by one of his plenary portions, accompanies the living entities to guide them in the material enjoyment and to become witness to all activities. So here in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining very nicely why we in this material world. Somebody generally asks, why am I here? So the reason you are here is because you have been strewn. You've been thrown into this material creation. Why you've been thrown? Because you want to enjoy separately from Krishna. The example is given of a mother. So the mother comes, the mother is busy cooking in the kitchen, and she has two daughters. And one daughter comes to the mother and says, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. Let's say the mother is making rotis. So the one daughter comes and says, Mommy, Mommy, I like to cook rotis with you. So the mother said, oh, sure, come. And together, the mother will cook rotis with the daughter. Another daughter comes, says, Mommy, I like to cook rotis like you. So the mother says, no problem, here's some dough, here's all the equipment, you go in one part of the kitchen and try to cook like me. So one daughter says, Mommy, I like to cook with you, rotis with you. And the other says, I like to cook rotis like you. The one that says, cook with you, she's with the mother. The one that says, cook like you, she's separated from the mother in the kitchen. Similarly, those who want to enjoy with God are in the spiritual world, and those who want to enjoy like God are strewn into the material creation. And unfortunately, we are those strewn souls who want to enjoy like God. And after billions and billions and billions of times trying to learn how to enjoy like God, hopefully we come to the right conclusion that it's not possible. Krishna is absolute, and you can never be Krishna. We are part and parcel, and we have a little tiny service to do in relation to Krishna. We don't even do any form of creation. Everything's facilitated by Krishna. So our duty is simply to be his servant and try to fulfill his desire. So, even though the Lord knows that, still he'll join the living entity as Paramatma, and wherever the living entity goes, the super soul will witness and sanction. The Lord doesn't want us to suffer, but he's sanctioning our causes, our activities. And because of the law that he created, then cause and effect, every action has a reaction. equal and opposite. So he's witnessing, and that is how every single reaction we get is due to our past, witnessed by the supersoul, and therefore delivered according to the laws of material nature. Prabhupada is going to describe the birds on this tree, and here's a picture of two birds. One is the enjoying bird that want to enjoy like God, separate from God, and the super soul is witnessing in our heart. Krishna is there. He's witnessing. He's waiting for us to turn our attention to him. Prabhupada writes, while the living entities enjoy the material conditions, the Lord maintains his transcendental position without being affected by the material atmosphere. In the Vedic literature, Shruti, it is said that there are two birds in one tree. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, while the other is witnessing the actions. The witness is the Lord, and the fruit eater is the living entity. The fruit eater living entity has forgotten his real identity and is overwhelmed in the fruitive activities of the material conditions. But the Lord, Paramatma, is always full in transcendental knowledge. That is the difference between the super soul and the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, the living entity, is controlled by the laws of nature, while the Paramatma, or the super soul, is the controller of the material energy. So very clear, the super soul is simply witnessing all our activities of exploiting and enjoying. And he's not affected, even though he's in the material world and he's in the heart and he's in every atom, he is totally transcendently situated. And here's a beautiful picture of the super soul that is there. It's described that the super soul is like thumb size. Also sometimes described from the base of the thumb to your tiny finger, that's the size. So the super soul is there and witnessing. There was a beautiful, because people may think, well, this is fairy tale. But there was last year, 2020, and there was a gentleman in Egypt, born in Egypt. So born in the Muslim tradition. And he, by some good piety, great devotional piety, he was having visions and communicating with the super soul. So he was actually seeing the super soul, and he was communicating, and the super soul was speaking to him. But he could not understand who the super soul was, because he never had any knowledge of that coming from the Islamic tradition. It's a long story, but his discussion went on, and he decided to really find out who's this person, this blue figure that's coming my mind, and in his dreams, and he's seeing this blue form, this form. So he started to Google, and he went to YouTube and he typed Vishnu form, because in his dream he asked, "Who are you?" And the super soul said, "I'm Vishnu." So he typed Vishnu, and it so happened that he went to YouTube and he typed Vishnu, and the first video that came up was a devotee from Pune. So he contacted the devotee via Instagram and made an appointment to fly to India to meet this devotee, because he wanted to know more about this beautiful form that was speaking to him and that was, he was seeing. And this is how he contacted the devotee, and this is how we also know the story of this wonderful gentleman that actually had communication with the super soul, and he described the exact features, even the markings on the feet of the Lord, the beautiful blue form, the Lord, he described. So this is how we know that the Lord exists. But we know Bhagavatam is absolute. Therefore, what the Bhagavatam is saying is absolute and factual. Prabhupada in the lecture says, so Krishna has given me a type of body so that I can enjoy, and he gives me reminder also. Now you wanted to enjoy like this, you have got this opportunity, you do it. This is the proof. You'll find even what is called a cub born of an animal, the dog, cats and dogs, they find out where is the mother's breast. The human child also, they also try to find out where is mother's breast, because they explain it as intuition. But we don't say intuition. We don't say it is intuition. Or even if you call it intuition, where from it is coming? It is coming from Paramatma. He's giving that you find out. Here you find your mother's breast, and here is your food. Here is your food. Therefore, even just at birth, the kitty, a small child, finds out where is food. This is explanation of intuition. So here, as Prabhupada explained the purport, the Lord, he's accompanying the living entity, and he guides the living entity according to how he wants to enjoy. So here's an example. When a calf is born, we find, just like when in Midran, when Nitai was born, when Lakshmi Priya was born, Nitai was born. She went to Lakshmi Priya, the mother, and she knew exactly where to go, where the udder was. Even though there's so many places she can go, but she's directed by the Super Soul. Prabhupada gives another example. When we find a lot of mosquitoes, when they're flying, hundreds of mosquitoes, and none of the mosquitoes crash. They're all flying at fast speeds. None of them crash. How come? Because the pilot is the Super Soul. The Super Soul is facilitating, guiding them so they don't crash. Another example is given, how the Super Soul is also guiding. We find a dog is very attentive. The dog's ears, ability to hear is very, very powerful. So when a dog is crossing the road, naturally the dog can hear the vehicles coming, somebody hooting, but yet you find that a vehicle can kill a dog. Why? Because the dog gets frozen, and therefore there is an accident and the dog is killed. So who freezes the dog? It's ascribed, for example, because according to karma, there has to be a reaction and the dog has to die. So therefore the dog will come right in the middle of the road, even if somebody is hooting, and the ear and the dog has the most powerful sense of hearing, still the dog doesn't hear anything. Why? Because the Super Soul will carry out the appropriate reaction and say, okay, now it's time for you to go. So sound system switched off. You can't hear anything. The dog doesn't hear anything. And even though the person is hooting, the dog can't hear anything. And the dog is killed. So like that, the Super Soul is also facilitating, making all the arrangements, or even reminding. Matta smiti gnanapanam cha. For me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, Krishna says. So this is how the Super Soul is very integrated in everyone's life. Text 32. Yataya vahito vanir darushve kaswayonishu naneva bhuti vishvatma bhuteshu cha tatapumam. The Lord, as Super Soul, pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appeals. So he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second. So this verse very clearly explains that even though the Super Soul has expanded everywhere, in every living entity's heart, in between every atom, in every atom, everywhere, still there's only one Super Soul. And the example is given, just like if I go into a circus, a museum park, and in that circus, if I go into that museum park, there may be a facility where I go into one facility where there's all different mirrors. And according to the nature of the mirror, I go in and I see myself stretched tall, exploded, funny. All my one form gets reflected on all the mirrors in different forms. And if I look around, I may see I got so many forms, there's so many of me here, but actually there's only one you. You just reflected in all these mirrors. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, Super Soul, is one. Shirodakasai Vishnu, one. Yet he's able to manifest himself, non-different, in every aspect of creation. Prabhupada writes, Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world. So you will see in all these descriptions, it's very clear. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the absolute truth, expands. He manifests. Right? So it is technically, there is in the expansions that do the work or the function, but it's all facilitated by the desire of Krishna, who wants to create, maintain, and destroy. By one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. Matter, antimatter, protons, neutrons, etc., all different effects of the Paramatma feature of the Lord. As from wood, fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of transcendental subjects, which are specially treated in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads and the Vedanta. Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide explanation of these Vedic literatures. The Lord can be realized through the oral reception of the transcendental message, and that is the only way to experience the transcendental subject. As fire is kindled from the wood by another fire, the divine consciousness of a man can similarly be kindled by another divine grace. His divine grace, the spiritual master, can kindle the spiritual fire from the wood-like living entity by imparting proper spiritual messages injected through the receptive ear. Therefore, one is required to approach the proper spiritual master with receptive ears only, and thus the divine experience is gradually realized. The difference between animality and humanity lies in this process only. A human being can hear properly, whereas animal cannot. So very, very wonderful point. You cannot understand all this by your own understanding of speculation or research. It's impossible. How are you going to even create a telescope that can see Mahavishnu or can see a super soul? Because the super soul is spiritual. You cannot use matter to see spirit. So your instruments and ingredients are defective. Therefore, if you want to research and see, okay, let me see the super soul, let me see Mahavishnu, you will not be able to, because the instruments are lacking. The only way to understand creation, Mahavishnu, the super soul, the interactions, the energies, how creation works, is through parampara, disciplic succession, as Prabhupada says, by divine grace, by hearing from a spiritual master who's connected to a spiritual master in disciplic succession, coming from Krishna. And therefore, we are fortunate to have the Bhagavatam coming from Krishna through disciplic succession, through Prabhupada, so that we can actually understand how creation works. And you will find that creation is described in many cantos of the Bhagavatam. Right from the beginning, we are hearing about creation. Why? Firstly, because we're in it. And when we understand why creation is there, we can understand what is the objective, is to leave this material creation and go to the spiritual nature, spiritual realm. Prabhupada talks about Krishna's brain. Every account is kept. So Prabhupada is talking about the super soul. What is the super soul doing? Right? Because the super soul knows past, present, and future. Super soul knows every single of your activities, what you thought of, how you acted, your feelings, every single action that you have carried out for your existence since time immemorial. The super soul knows. Every account is kept. Just imagine how many numberless there are living entities. Ashankya, Jiva Bhago, Sa Vigneya, Sa Chanantaya Kalpate. There is no, you cannot, innumerable. And each and every individual soul is doing according to his own desire, and every account is kept. And accounts don't get mixed up. They don't get lost. They don't get hacked. You get what you sow. Just imagine how expert accountant is required. Every account is kept because he has to be offered again another body, taking account of his activities. Karmana Deva Nitrana. He's acting, innumerable living entities. So how big brain is Krishna? You can just imagine. And not only one planet, there are innumerable planets and there are innumerable universes, everything innumerable. That is called unlimited. Everything numerable. And still, some rascal claims that he's God. How much brain a God requires, he does not know. How big brain? Anvayad iteratus chartes vigna. So wonderful. And the reason why creation is described in the Bhagavatam, why Prabhupada is making this point in his purport, when we read it, we say, wow, Krishna is far out. Krishna is amazing. Even time is manifested from the atom in relation to Krishna, super soul. So when we begin to understand creation, how it's created, it's fascinating, it's powerful, how powerful Krishna is, how magnificent Krishna is, then this inspires devotion. This inspires awe and reverence. Wow, I'm so fortunate to know God. I'm fortunate to know the absolute truth, Krishna. And he's creating the creation for all these different reasons and how he's doing it. And therefore we become submissive and humble to surrender to Krishna. Because he's our source, he's our father. He's connected to us, we are family. He's not a stranger. And when we recognize that, we surrender and perfect our life. Verse 33. Aso gunaya mayar baver bhuta shuksmen dreyat mabi swanirmiteshu nirvisto bhungte bhute shutat gunan. The super soul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by the subtle mind. So now the function of the super soul is described. Because the super soul is there and the modes of material nature are there, then we will enjoy or suffer the effects of the modes through the subtle mind. Prabhupada writes, there are 8,400,000 species of living beings, beginning from the highest intellectual being, Brahma, down to the insignificant ant. And all of them are enjoying the material world according to the desires of subtle mind and gross material body. The gross material body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desire of the living being. I'll read it again. The gross body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desires of the living being. So somebody may say, I've got such an ugly nose. Well, why did you get an ugly nose? Because of the ugly desire in your mind. You have been desiring it, you got it. As you sow, so shall you reap. So every facility we have, every faculty we got, every situation you have, everything that you get, you desired, witnessed by the super soul, delivered by the laws of material nature. If you desire a set of senses, a body, location, everything, you get it. Then similarly, the law also holds true. If I desire my spiritual body again, my spiritual service again, my spiritual family again, the spiritual realm and my loving relation with Krishna again, I can get it. How? If I change the conditions of my subtle mind. So as soon as I change the conditions of my subtle mind, that is called Krishna consciousness, Krishnatizing my mind, to think of Krishna, to glorify Krishna, to hear about Krishna. And the more I do that, I will condition my mind, Krishnatize my mind. And because the law says you Krishnatize your mind, you will get Krishna again in the shelter of Krishna. The Lord, as Paramatma, helps the living being to get material happiness because the living being is helpless in all respects in obtaining what he desires. He proposes and the Lord disposes. In another sense, the living beings are part and parcels of the Lord. They are therefore one with the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings in all varieties of bodies have been claimed by the Lord as his sons. The suffering and enjoyment of the sons are indirectly the suffering and enjoyments of the Father. Still, the Father is not in any way affected directly by the suffering and enjoyment of the Son. He is so kind that he constantly remains with the living being as Paramatma and always tries to convert the living being towards real happiness. So the happiness we experience in this material world is unfortunately material. It's not false, it's material, and it's temporary. And we already covered the traits of material happiness. And that will never satisfy the soul. What we need to satisfy ourselves completely is spiritual happiness. Therefore, the super soul is trying to also make arrangements, even though the super soul does not interfere. But the super soul is desiring that you come in contact with a devotee so that you can start turning your attention back towards him instead of away from him. So I'll cover any questions. Please keep your questions at the end, and we'll cover any questions you have after I finish. So now the Lord has very clearly now described, or Sutta Goswami has described briefly the creation of the Purusha avatars, super soul expanding, and the function of the super soul. And now we're concluding the last verse where we're answering the third question. Bhavayatyesha satvena lokhanvai lokabhavana lilavatara nutaro deva tiryan naradishu. Thus, the Lord of the universes maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. So the third question was in relation to the Lord's appearance. So here it's described, Sutta Goswami is answering, the Lord appears in the different incarnations. He personally also comes for one purpose only, and that is to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. And this is why we want to rise to the platform of pure goodness, so that Krishna can reclaim us. And this is the purpose. All other purposes are secondary. Krishna is really interested. His heart, his true desire is for you to come back to his shelter. Prabhupada writes in the purport, there are innumerable material universes, and in each and every universe, there are innumerable planets inhabited by different grades of living entities in different modes of nature. Lord Vishnu incarnates himself in each and every one of them, and in each and every type of living society. He manifests his transcendental pastimes amongst them just to create the desire to go back to Godhead. The Lord does not change his original transcendental position, but he appears to be differently manifested according to the particular time, circumstance, society. So Prabhupada is making it very clear here that Krishna appears in every society. Every society means insect, birds, beasts, reptiles, humans, demigods, every society. And even in species, different species. Krishna's appearing in unlimited incarnations in different forms, simply to create the favorability for them so that they can turn their attention back. He can help them create a desire to go back. Sometimes he incarnates himself or empowers a suitable living being to act for him. But in either case, the purpose is the same. The Lord wants the suffering living being to go back home, back to Godhead. The happiness which the living beings are hankering for is not to be found within any corner of innumerable universes and material planets. The eternal happiness which the living being wants is obtainable in the kingdom of God. But the forgetful living being under the influence of material modes have no information of the kingdom of God. The Lord therefore comes to propagate the message of the kingdom of God, either personally as an incarnation or through his bona fide representative as the good Son of God. Such incarnations or sons of God are not making propaganda for going back to Godhead only within human society. Their work is also going on in all types of society, amongst the demigods and amongst other human beings. So Prabhupada is making so beautifully clear that the Lord wants the suffering living beings to go back home. And no pleasure, doesn't matter what pleasure exists in its greatest quantity within the material universes, can satisfy the soul. Only going back to the spiritual world in loving service to Krishna. So therefore, this is why the Lord appears to come and take us back home, back to Godhead. In few lectures, in fact, 2 lectures, Prabhupada, same lecture, Prabhupada says, so there are so many societies, Deva, Tiriyan, Naradishu, and in every society, there is incarnation of God according to their position, according to their language, according to their problems, there is incarnation. We do not see other incarnations, but we can see the human form of incarnation. Ramadi Murteshu Kala Niyame Na Tishtan. But from the Shastras, we can understand there are incarnations among low animals, beasts, birds, everywhere. The purpose is to reclaim the fallen souls. So not only he incarnates, but he sends his devotee, he comes as devotee. So we proud to make it a point here in his lecture that the Lord appears in all incarnate, but we cannot see that. As human beings, we'll only be able to recognize the human form of incarnation. Just like here we see in this picture, beautiful form of Matsya, fish incarnation. And the pure devotees, they're able to recognize, they're able to see. But the masses, they cannot recognize. But the fish, they are able to witness and get the blessings of Matsya incarnation. We should be very careful that although there are many thousands and thousands of incarnations of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, still, when we have to accept somebody or something as incarnation, we must refer to Shastra. Then it will be all right. Otherwise, we shall be misled. That has been done. So many in the street, in the lanes, and there are so many gods. And especially the God, all the gods are going to Western countries. So even though this verse stating that Krishna appears and probably making a point in unlimited incarnation doesn't mean that they are phony ones and we have to accept the phony ones as true. Nope. Phony ones will be there and we're not interested in the phony incarnations. Therefore, scripture also are very authoritative and give the proper descriptions, time, place, details, qualities and characteristics of these incarnations so that we don't become misled by the bogus incarnations. Then Prabhupada continues, this speciality of devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. Lord Shri Krishna is specifically mentioned here. Lord Shri Krishna is Swayam Rupa, personality of Godhead, and all other forms of Godhead, beginning from Shri Baladev, Sankarshan, Vasudev, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Narayan, and extending to the Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, Yuga avatars, and many other thousands of manifestations of personality of Godhead, are Lord Shri Krishna's plenary portions and integrated parts. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna is the original form of Godhead, and he is the last word in transcendence. Thus, he is more attractive to the higher transcendentalists who participate in eternal pastimes of the Lord. In the forms of the personality of Godhead, other than Shri Krishna Baladev, there is no faculty for intimate personal contact as in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord at Vrajabhumi. The transcendental pastimes of Shri Krishna are not newly accepted as argued by the less intelligent persons. These pastimes are eternal and are manifest in due course once in a day of Brahma, as the sun rises and on the horizon, on the eternal horizon at the end of every 24 hours. So we discussed this point of all the incarnations manifest from Krishna, and Krishna is Swayam Rupa, original form. And all these incarnations are his forms. They're not different from him, but they have different abilities or potencies that manifest at specific times. So therefore, they are one and different. I normally give the example that if we want to be at 3 places at the same time, it's very difficult. I cannot be at home with my family and be at work and be enjoying somewhere. It's just not possible. Let's say swimming, for example. It's not possible. But Krishna, he just has to desire to be in multiple places at the same time, and he can be there, multiple places. And the beauty is that Krishna, when he desires to be at a different place, he can manifest in the appropriate form and be there in that specific form at the same time. Unlimited places, unlimited forms. So this is how Krishna is the Swayam Rupa personality, and he can manifest in unlimited forms. I'm not going to go into this chart in great detail. You can read. This is from Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 6. His forms are one and the same. I'll just briefly share some points, and you can obviously use this chart and go more extensively into it. So here's the first point. Prabhupada says, sometimes the Lord thinks of himself as a coward boy, and sometimes he thinks himself as the son of Vasudeva, a Kshatriya prince. And this thinking of Krishna is called pastimes. So it's interesting, all of Krishna's expansions are simply manifested by Krishna's thinking and desiring, and they then appear. So this is how Krishna creates unlimited forms, and they are technically described in terms of detail. So for example, it starts off Goloka Vrindavan, then forms in Vaikuntha, then forms in between the spiritual and material worlds, Brahmajyoti and Virajrava, and then forms that appear within this material creation for specific services. You'll see in terms of the color coding, and you can read a clear description given in by Prabhupada in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. There's the Swayam Rupa, and the Swayam Rupa, there's the Tat Ekatma Rupa, and then there's the Avesh, 3 different categories. And within each category, there are subcategories. So there's Swayam Prakash that has 2 categories, Prabhava Prakash and Vaibhava Prakash. And I'm just going to go through this in terms of the Purusha avatars, not the others. So from Swayam Prakash form of Krishna's expansion, one of it is Vaibhava Prakash. This is just Krishna's form with different either bodily color or emotion. So Balaram is non-different from Krishna, it's just that his color is different, but he's non-different from Krishna. And his emotion is different. Krishna is enjoying, Balaram is serving. Then from Balaram comes the Tad Ekatma Rupa, and a category of that is Vilas. Vilas also has, there's Vilas and there's Swamsha, 2 different categories. And Vilas also has different categories. So Balaram expands in the Chaturvuya, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. These are called the Adi Chaturvuya. Then from this first Sankarshan, he expands, these are Vishnu forms, he expands as the Narayan features, and there are different Narayan forms. Here you find from this Sankarshan, who appears as Lord Narayan, he expands again as the second Chaturvuya, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And each of these Narayan Vishnu forms, they expand in 3, Keshava, Narayan, Madhava, etc. Each of these 3 forms. And then Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha also then expands as 2 different specific forms. So total of 24 Vishnu forms. And here we find Prabhupada is making a point in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You can read also in chapter 7. According to Vaishnav Almanac, the 12 months of the year are named according to the 12 Vaikuntha forms of the Lord. So Keshava right up to Damodar, the 12 months, and the months are named according to them. What you'll also notice is that these are also the 12 forms that we use to chant and apply tilak. So not only in this universe, but in all other universes as well, the forms of Krishna are distributed. All these different Vishnu forms are established as deities in different parts of creation, and they are worshipped like that. Then from this Sankarshan, so from Krishna, Balaram expands. From Balaram, 4 Chaturvuya expansions, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Niruddha. From this Sankarshan, Narayan appears and another quadruple form appears. From this Sankarshan, the Purusha avatar, Karadaksai Vishnu appears. Then Karadaksai Vishnu expands as Kaubadaksai Vishnu and then Shilrakasai Vishnu. And from the Narayan forms, all the different incarnations and different types of avatars, they all manifest. So very, very integrated, different expansions of expansions. This is just to illustrate creation is not just a big bang, explosion, and an evolution. No, it's not like that. It's very systematic, very detailed, very creative in different features and facets of Krishna's forms, and yet is one without a second. Here is the 24 forms. You can use this as a list also. The 24 Vishnu forms that are there. And Prabhupada says here, when one describes the portions of objects in the hands of the Vishnu Murti, one should begin with the lower right, then move to upper right, then upper left, and finally to the lower left. So one moves this way from the lower right, upper, and then come to the left-hand side. And depending on the position of the club, chakra, conch, and lotus, depending on the position, then that specific form has that specific name. And here's a table where you can see the 24 different forms of Vishnu. And here, for example, Keshava is the first. So we can understand Keshava, this is Keshava because there is the Padma, lotus, then there is the Shankha, conch, then Chakra, next hand, and lower left, Gada. So when you see this form of the Lord, you know Om Keshavaya Namaha, this is Keshava. And here you'll see a list of all the 24 names of Lord Vishnu and what it means. So for example, Vishnu, there is a form of Vishnu and is named Vishnu, one who is omnipresent and pervades everywhere in the universe, one who's present within the atom, Anu, or of the universe. So he's called Vishnu. Vishva is the universe, and Anu. So when you put Vishva with Anu, you get Vishnu. That is the name of Vishnu, one who's all pervading in every atom. Right? So this is how very interesting how the names of the Lord. For example, here's another one, Narayan. So Narayan, excuse me, one who is the final refuge, Ayana, of all Nara, living entities. So when you put Nara, living entities, and Ayana becomes Narayana. One whose final refuge is Narayan, Krishna. One whose final refuge is Krishna, that his name is Narayan. One who resides, Anaya, in all the jivas is Nara. One who rests, Anaya, on water, Nara, within the universe is Narayan. So like that, the names, beautiful names of the Lord, they have deep meaning, and the 24 Vishnu forms. And that brings us to the end of this beautiful chapter of the first canto, the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the second canto, second chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divinity and Divine Service. Antarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo. Any questions or comments? So Bhafana Prabhu says, the word is very powerful and scary on how we got to the material manifestation. Very sublime, appreciate. Some people are angry and they believe that Krishna takes away everything and devious in worshipping and serving Krishna. Yes, Krishna doesn't take anything away. Krishna only takes everything away for those who are totally surrendered, pure devotees. But Krishna definitely doesn't take. It's our karma. Our action and reaction will deliver and take away, give us and not give us, is all our actions. So if we lose something, lose a family member, it's simply because of our karma. If you don't want to lose any family member in existence, then go back to the spiritual world. But because you asked to come here, then you actually asked to be separated from your loved ones. You asked to suffer bodily inconveniences. You asked to be incomplete. You asked to not be satisfied. Therefore, if you don't want these things, understand your mistake and go back home. Yes, Prabhu, you got your hand raised.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the lesson today about the creation. It was so
Prabhu,
fascinating.
let me just put my volume. Yes, please repeat your question.
And I'm just saying thank you so much for the lesson. It was so fascinating. Well, initially I wanted to ask something, but it's been answered in any case. But I wanted to understand the thing about the suffering and enjoyment of the sons, and indirectly the suffering and enjoyment of the father.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted just to have how would the affection of the father in the suffering of the son, and how is that those intertwined? Can I say
Good.
what manifestations
Yes.
are? How is the father? Is the affection of the father? What's the affection of the father? Is the father always there to help us go back home, to get out of the miseries that we've put ourselves in? So I just wanted an understanding around the two intertwined manifestation of the son's suffering and indirectly the suffering of the father. And how is the father suffering as a result of the suffering of the sons? Although he is still not attached or still not part of it, but as is present as a Paramatma, how is he serving the suffering part of it for us? And how I'm making him to suffer? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Sure. Yeah. And what's your good name?
My name?
Yes.
Bafana.
Oh, your name is Bafana. Okay, good.
Yes.
Right. So Bafana had a wonderful question. And it's interesting that Krishna, he expands in different forms, and the different forms also respond in different ways. So for example, the super soul, you can't have a direct relationship with the super soul as you can have with Krishna, because the super soul has a certain purpose, a certain function. Like, for example, if Lord Ramachandra or Lord Nrsingadev, they have a personality. Krishna is got a personality. Now, Krishna's devotees, certain group of devotees, they can jump on Krishna's shoulders and play with him. They can even fist him, they can punch him, they can wrestle with him. And he enjoys that. You can't do that with Lord Nrsingadev. Don't even dare. You can't do that with Lord Ramachandra. Right? Why? Even though they're non-different from Krishna, they have a certain personality. Similarly, the super soul, also, he's there simply to witness and to sanction. So when scripture says certain statements, they are saying certain statements, understanding that Krishna is one yet different from his forms. So the super soul, he will not interfere with what you want to do, but he does feel pain, and he wants to tell you, don't do that, you're going to suffer. But he's not meant to speak. So how does he do that? Let's say you do something wrong and you feel what we call negative or bad conscience. You have this conscience, I shouldn't have done that. That's wrong. That conscience to feel, I shouldn't have done that, that's coming from the super soul feeling bad. That why are you doing this? This is not good. and it's coming like that. Krishna, he can personally come and tell you, please don't do that. But he'll only reveal himself to those who are in the mode of pure goodness. Rarely does he reveal himself to people who are in the low modes. Super soul will indirectly inspire us like that through negative conscience. So Krishna, he feels the suffering of ourselves because why? We have separated ourselves from him. So he feels that. That's why he's sending his servants. He's sending scripture. He's coming because he wants us back home. But at the same time, his pleasure is not disturbed in the spiritual world. Like a father who, let's say a son who's staying with his father, and the son now says, Dad, I'm not interested in you. I want to be independent. I want to enjoy myself, and I don't need your support. I'm out of here. So the father will say, what need is there? You can stay here. You have all my facility. You have the house. I'm paying the rent. I'm doing everything for you. I'm also, providing. So why you want to bother going and living separately? And the son will say, no, I want to be independent. I don't want to live with you. I want to live my own life. So the father doesn't like it. He's not happy, but he's not going to stop his son. And he'll say, okay, my son, go. So now when the son leaves, the father still loves his son. The father will still continue to loving his son. And the father will always keep in touch and try to connect. But the son may not be interested in the father. And that does cause pain to the father. So he loves his son. It causes pain to his son. He'll still reach out. Let's say he finds that his son is now struggling and he can't survive and he can barely put food on the table. The father will, stretch his hand and try to reach out. The son will be stubborn and say, no, I'm not interested in your support. So it pains him, yet he's still extending his love. And the father still continues living his life in his house. It doesn't stop. Similarly, Krishna continues to living his life in the spiritual world with his associates. At the same time, there's a part of Krishna that's reaching out to all of us through the Bhagavatam, through spiritual teachers and key incarnations. And at the same time, we are rejecting Krishna and it gives Krishna pain. But it never stops Krishna from living his life in the spiritual world, like the example of the father. Okay. Sham says, thank you very much for the informative class. Thank you very much, Sham. So there's a question from Hemavati Prabhu. Are the universes coming out of Mahavishnu material? So yes. So the universe that are coming from Mahavishnu's body are said to be like golden empty shells, and they come into the material environment, and Maya Devi will then go into it and create it. So yes, it's his energy. Now remember, here's an interesting aspect. Is electricity hot or cold? Is electricity hot or cold? Anyone can answer, or even Hemavati. Is electricity hot or cold? Both. Okay, depends. Neither. Depends on its purpose. Right. So electricity is not hot and electricity is not cold. Electricity is electricity. And if you push electricity through an equipment that we call a fridge, it generates cold. If you push electricity through a stove, it produces heat. So it's not the electricity that's hot or cold. It's the electricity that goes through different instruments that produces heat or cold. From one end, it seems that electricity is doing it, but actually it's not the electricity itself. Similarly, from the Lord's perspective, he doesn't have material energy and spiritual energy. it's all spiritual for him. From our perspective, we have matter and spirit. We see matter and we see spirit. Why? Because we want to enjoy, and when we want to enjoy the Lord's energy separate from the Lord, it becomes matter. When we take that matter and employ it in the service of the Lord, it regains its spiritual original quality of spirit. So it's the difference between matter and spirit. So when you ask, is the universe is coming from the Lord's pause material? From his perspective, it's not material. There is no material. It's all spiritual. From your perspective, because you're a prisoner, it's material. Okay, so I hope I answered that question. Krishna has his pastimes there also. Yes, even in the, so the Lord has pastimes in the spiritual world, the Lord has pastimes as Mahavishnu, while in slumber, the Lord has pastimes in the material creation also. Living entities, they also become Krishna conscious and perfect their lives. I don't understand, please explain. In which realm are you talking about in terms of your questions? Maybe you can unmute and you can just clarify.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It's
Hare Krishna.
the universes that comes out of Mahavishnu.
Yes.
So in those universes, do they have opportunity to like become Krishna conscious?
So consider we in one of the universes, right? In fact, we in the smallest universe. Our universe is 4 billion miles in diameter because we got a Brahma that has 4 heads. So from end to end, 4 billion miles in diameter. This is our smallest universe. There are universes with the Brahmas that have 10 heads, so therefore 10 billion miles diameter, 100 heads, 100 billion miles diameter. So we in the smallest universe. So we in a universe, we have an opportunity to surrender to Krishna. Like that, in every universe, same thing is happening. They also have opportunity. They're also in Maya. It's all the prison house. They're also in Maya. They're also struggling. The Lord also appears there. He also is encouraging them. They also have the opportunity to become Krishna conscious. Every single universe. No difference. It's just that the size is different. And therefore the faculties or facilities may be more opulent or less opulent. But it's exactly the same. Is that clear?
Yes. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Does Lord Krishna leave the spiritual when he comes to the material world? Very good question. In fact, we are in the most fortunate age ever. Lord Krishna, Swayam Rupa, comes only once in a day of Brahma. Approximately, I think, every 8,640,000,000 years. Once in a day of Brahma. The Dwapar Yuga that passed 5,000 years ago, Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago. That is the Swayam Bhagavan Krishna that appeared. He's not an expansion of an expansion of an expansion. He is the Supreme Personality that appeared and performed those pastimes, which mean the pastimes that are in the Krishna book that we have currently in the Bhagavatam. Those are pastimes of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya that appears after that Yuga, or that also on 28th day of Brahma, after Krishna, original Krishna appears, is also original Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore this Dwapara Yuga and this Kali Yuga is the most blessed, that we have that opportunity that comes every 8,640,000,000 years, where the original Lord appears to come to attract us and take us back home. So yes, Shyam, that Shyam Sundar does not appear in every Yuga, in every incarnation. He only appears once in a day of Brahma. Please share to us a chart of the Mahavishnu manifestation based on circumstances and time. Right, is that the twin? Is that Ufana, which chart are you? Maybe you can send me a screenshot on the. Which chart were you talking about?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I was referring to the chart where you were showing us the 24 forms
Okay,
of
cool. Yes.
Yeah, so we can just
24
perhaps
visual.
out and make a copy for ourselves.
Yes, I'll make a PDF and I'll put that onto the Telegram group.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
All right, wonderful. Those are all the questions. Thank you very much. If there's no other questions, we will end there. And next week, we will continue with the next chapter, which is chapter number 3. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gop Pramanande.